everybody. And yes, your dulcet tones are amazing. I'm quite concerned about my dulcet tones, which might not be. I need to apologise as well in advance. I am in the UK, and I am in my attic. And if there is some wind noise, I do apologise, and hopefully my roof won't be blown off. It sometimes sounds as though it is. And thank you for saying that my tones are almost as good as Don's. Okay, what I want to do first of all is explain, I think, where I come from an innovation space. I am passionate about innovation. I'm passionate about doing things in a way that is better. And innovation for online learning, I think, is very misunderstood. And I think it's one of those things that that we quite often misconstrue and get wrong, and certainly it's misconstrued in the organisations in which we work. But before we go any further, I'd like to ask a question, and if we can just have some answers in the text. What does innovation mean to you?
It's a very good question, Andy. And by the way, I have a slight issue, which is that my Internet Explorer has just dropped. So I'm not actually able to see what's happening. Andy, I'm going to assume you can hear me.
Yep.
And if you could just have a look at what's coming from the chat area, and hopefully things are coming from the chat area. So I can't see anything at the moment. They are, super. My Internet Explorer is completely frozen, it's just rebooting. So what are people seeing, and what's your response to what are you thinking?
Okay, we've got a lot. We've got so what does innovation mean to you? Ian says new and useful. Sorry, I'm not going to give everyone's names. It's going to take far too long. Simpler solution, continuous improvement, finding new ways to do things, creativity, of course, coming up with new ideas, trying new things and doing things in a new way. That's Richard saying that, and I think that's the doing things in a new way. I think is incredibly useful. Shirley says disruptive change. Trying something different is coming out, thinking out of the box, doing something.
Presentation mode is now disabled. Presentation mode is now enabled.
Okay, I hopefully everyone else didn't hear that. The presentation mode is now enabled, but there we go.
Sorry, Andy, that was me just coming back in.
Okay. Hello again, Don. I think there's lots of things that people are saying. I think actually what people are doing is describing creativity, perhaps, more than innovation. And please don't sort of scream at me if I say that, because I think there's a very, very important difference, and hopefully I'll come to that as we go through this.
That's a really interesting distinction, Andy. Yeah. Okay. So go back to the presentation.
Okay. So I mean, there's lots of things. Somebody saying innovation doesn't have to be disruptive. We can talk about that. I think that might be interesting. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to start off by talking about this, which is absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with online learning, but it's a lot to do with innovation and the process of innovation. So does anyone know what this is? And I've given a bit of a clue. This is the OhDon device, or OhDon device. Please don't look it up just yet. Yeah, it's the baby delivery thing, right? Now, the story behind this, I think, is wonderful, because this was developed by a mechanic, and the quote that you can see here is from a doctor in the World Health Organization, who is saying delivery is a mechanical process, so it's not surprising a mechanic solved a problem. Really, this guy didn't know anything about delivering babies, but what he did have a flair for was thinking around a problem in a different way and taking disruptive ideas and applying them in new and different ways. So this came about from him working out, seeing a trick of how to get a cork out of a glass bottle without breaking it. If you want to know more about this, have a look at just Google the OhDon device. There's some really interesting thoughts, and I'll come back to the OhDon device later. But there's some very interesting thoughts about how it actually worked, and I think that's quite informative for us in how we want to really make a difference in the work that we do. And I think that's the key for me is innovation in online learning is not about doing new and shiny things necessarily. It's about making a difference to our users, and enabling our users to do their jobs better, and to be better. And I think if that is our mantra, we're going a long way. But first of all, we need to have a look at the state of reality. So I want to look at organizations and innovation. And in the blurb around the webinar, I mentioned that organizations don't want innovators or innovation, but they say they do. And there's a number of very interesting reasons around that. I don't want this to be too much of a negative session, but I think it's useful to explore these things. And then also I want to explore some ways that we can get around this. So they don't want you, but they say they do. So why don't organizations want innovation? Well, first of all, it's risky in an organization's mind. It's risky to reputation, and it's risky because it's unproven. So what does that mean? Let's unpack that slightly. If you're in a learning department and you've been delivering learning very well, then it's a lot safer to do the things that you've been doing before, and you can affect your reputation, and you can affect your how well you can deliver things in the future, because it's something that's completely unproven and not being done. And of course, if you start suggesting new things, then you're a maverick, as we now have a picture of Maverick on. They say things like, it just won't work, or that's Andy's idea, or worse, you're labelled a free thinker, in inverted commas. And there's almost nothing worse than being called a free thinker in an organisation, because it means you're challenging the status quo. Now, all these things are things that will be thrown back at you if you come and you start talking about doing things differently. And it's worth being aware of them. There's also a cost, or a perceived cost, involved in innovation. And that cost is around, well, time. It takes too long to change things. Let's keep doing things the way we've done them before. It costs too much, or there's a risk to revenue, depending on which side of the fence you happen to sit on. And then, of course, there's an opportunity cost. We could be doing more of the same thing that we've always done. I kind of hope that I'm preaching to the choir here, but we know that what happens if you do the same thing that you've always done is you get the same that you've always got. But that's not the worst. The worst one is that we could be doing more of what they're doing, whoever they are. And I've seen this from an internal point of view, and I've seen this from an external point of view as well. So you follow your competition, or you follow someone else. When the first ever time I was fortunate enough to speak at Learning Tech, a guy came up to me afterwards and said, I love the ideas you've got. I love the thinking you'd got around a workshop concept that we'd used, and Learning Champions. And it'd be great if we can just take that model and apply it into my situation. That's not how innovation works. That's not how you make a difference, because every situation is different. So innovation is so often thought about in a way that is wrong, that it actually hurts your ability to innovate. And then, of course, you have the absolute nightmare situation where your manager comes up to you and says, I want an innovative solution. Or worse, my boss wants an innovative solution. And they're almost the kiss of death to anything, because they don't mean that they want an innovative solution. Because if they want an innovative solution, you can say, okay, so we're going to do it with jam, and we'll have jam pots put everywhere, and we can use jam to spread the word, pun intended. But that's not what they mean. What they mean is, we'd like a solution that looks a little bit like what the other people are doing well, which is a little bit challenging, and it's not going to help you in your situation. So you either have an innovative solution, or you revert to type and you do what you always did. You go back to that same vendor because it's comfortable. You go back to the challenges, to the people that you've used, the delivery methods that you've used in the past, because it's comfortable, because it's nice, because it's easy, because it doesn't change too much and it doesn't cause anyone too much risk. So if you're going to be an innovator, then you need to be aware of the fact that it's going to be, you might meet some resistance. Be aware of that up front, but then you can have lots of fun with this. So let's look a little bit more about what innovation is and what I define innovation as. And I see it very much as a series of choices, and intentional choices and questions that answer a particular need. And this lovely little graphic is simply a amalgamation of everything. Everything comes together, but you need to answer a need over on the right as everything starts coalescing into that. Now I'm going to come a little bit later on to what those choices and what some of those questions are, and hopefully I'll walk you through a process. I just want to pick up something that Richard mentioned in the chat about innovation projects can attract funds. They can, but if you're, in my experience, if you're attached to a project that is seen as being innovative, you're attached to all sorts of dangerous expectations, and usually those expectations are so far out of reality that you're setting yourself up to fail. And there's a big challenge around that, and I think we'll come to that in a second. So innovation then is this series of choices and questions. It is not, for our purposes, it is not out there. It's not one of these types of solutions. And that's what people often think about. They think innovation is, let's move all our learning entirely online. I was there in the e-learning bubble when everything went online completely. That was crazy. It's not doing, following the shiniest, brightest, most amazing new things. And I think in L&D we are possibly the worst for being magpies about going after the new shiny thing. So it's not about out there, and it's not about new. For me, innovation is about tweaking, and it's about tweaking ideas and concepts and thinking. So if you think about the, can you name the first ever smartphone? Can you name the first ever tablet? I need to give a bit of full disclosure here. I am a complete Apple fan. I know for a fact that the iPad and the iPhone weren't the first smartphones, and they weren't the first tablets, but they are tweaks of the concept, and they are tweaks of the ideas. And this is something I think that is useful for us to think about. The other thing to say about innovation at this very high level is that we need to get over the fact that the next big thing is already being done. And that might sound a little bit depressing, but we can almost guarantee, in the nature of the inspiration that we have and the nature of the world that we live in, if you're thinking of something, someone else is thinking of something, and certainly if it's a big thing that's affecting a very common problem. So the question you need to ask yourself is, okay, is this something that I can actually reasonably do something about? And I'd like to talk about small changes, because this is where I think that the most interesting innovation is. And I want to talk about increasing everything by 1%. And I love this concept, and this is obviously, this has been used in various different places. But the most famous place that this has been used is with these guys, with the Great Britain cycling team in the Olympics, the last two Olympics. So there's a strong argument to suggest that these guys benefited from what they call the marginal gains team. And these were guys who spent all their time between the Olympics trying to work out what small gains there were. And they were things that they did on the bikes, sure. So they sprayed alcohol on the tires to remove grit and to make them a tiny bit more sticky for when they were doing a standing start. They had life-size models of athletes in wind tunnels so they could get an accurate representation of the wind. But they also did some things that are quite bizarre. So they had to each have their own pillow. They didn't use pillows from team hotels. They were taught how to wash their hands properly, which sounds very strange, but they were trying to get 1% less ill. They would have fish oil and a certain type of cherries between races so that they could recover a tiny bit faster. And they were the only team in the 2012 Olympics that went faster in the final than they did in the semi-final. Okay, so if you didn't believe me that 1% really mattered, then it really, really does. And these guys show it. But how does that work in a training environment? Well, stepping through to Malcolm Gladwell and thinking about another small change. So it's not necessarily a small change that you can measure from a 1%, but he tells a story in Tipping Point of the very famous thing in New York where they helped reduce the problems of violence on the trains. And there's lots of reasons for it, but a few of the reasons are quite small and quite interesting. So they stopped small-time gate hopping. So this was where people would just jump over the barriers. And they stopped it, so they made sure you had to pay to get onto the train. And they also cleaned the graffiti off. Now, how does cleaning graffiti off change violent crime? It's the small things that are making the big difference. An example that I've got was in a workshop we were doing to create some online learning. And the workshop was about a very technical solution. And what would normally happen is the learning designer would go and sit with the subject matter experts and get a brain dump from them, and then they'd go away, and you'd go through the whole process of trying very hard to understand what they said, and going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And it takes a long time, and it's very often you don't get a useful result. So what we did was we asked one question: what if? And I think what if is the most important question you should be asking. But what if we got them to create the content in the workshop? So we had a workshop for 1 week. We got the team in, and we gave them the ability to design and create their own learning, and we taught them how to do it with some rapid development tools, and they produced something. It wasn't the best training in the world, but it was good enough for them. And it was good enough for what they needed, and it was good enough for what they wanted in terms, and what their users wanted in terms of being able to learn the stuff that they needed. But that also had lots of other benefits. They were much more engaged. We got much better content, and it was much faster to deploy. So it's the small change. It's a small change to a content development workshop that makes a very big difference. Now that all leads in to the next thing about innovation, which is permission. Now, we often talk about rather asking for forgiveness rather than for permission. But with online with innovation, you need to have permission to be able to do it. You can't just change things. I like the concept of the change the world. I call it a Hollywood vision. That we're going to come in and we're going to change the world. We're going to make everything better, and isn't this amazing? And we all go for these really exciting big projects. But do you know what? If you're going to start innovating, if you're going to start making a difference, then you don't start big, because if you go for the Hollywood vision of I'm going to change the world or die trying, then you'll die trying. And I know that sounds quite negative, but if you start too big, you're going to fail, because no one's going to go with you and no one's going to believe you. You need to have some kind of track record. And so doing one thing allows you to do the next. It's the old adage of you eat the elephant, hence the picture of an elephant, one bite at a time. But the great thing about that is that sooner or later, one day, you'll have eaten an elephant. And I've been very lucky in my career, because I've been able to have a bit of an idea of what things I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. But it's taken me a long time to realize that in every single project that I've done, I can change something and I can tweak something, and doing that small change and doing that small innovation wins me permission to do it next, to do the next one that I want to do. And so after a while, people accept that you do things in a different way, and you're getting the ability to do things and see things differently and to think in a different way. And then, of course, you can inspire other people to do that. But there's something I've got to say as well, which is it needs to have a really good reason. You can't just change things because you think things need to be changing. You need to have a goal, and you need to have a problem to fix. I'm going to come to that in a second. The other thing that you need to do, and this is something that I'm particularly bad at, but you need to get your data. And so people on the chat have been talking about big data, and big data is incredibly useful for winning permission for innovation and for small changes. But get your metrics. So find out what metrics that you have managed to affect with your change. And don't just think about this in terms of has someone learnt something? How effective is my training? What about your metrics of how easily someone can log on to your training? How quickly things are downloaded? What is the business impact metrics that you have that's important? Is it the mean time to recovery? Is it the number of rings that the phone gives before it's answered? Get your metrics and use them to show that you are allowed to do this and you can win permission to do it more. Get the user experience as well. One of the biggest things we often overlook is how the user feels about how everything is going and what everything is, how they felt and how they feel after the training. I'm not talking about happy sheets. I'm talking about their experience in using the learning and using the things that you've done. Get some evidence of time and money saved, or maybe some revenue gained. So get your metrics. It gives you a very good platform for which to innovate. Now, all of this is a little bit conceptual. One more conceptual thing, and then I want to dive into a little bit of the process. Hopefully I'm on time here. It's a very simple process. People say innovation, creativity, oh, it's difficult, it's hard, it's fluffy, it's not very easy to pin down. We can see that from the number of definitions that come up. I see it as a very simple process, and this was articulated very well by John Harmon over at Digital Adventures recently. So, John, if you're on, thank you very much for this. I did ask him permission before I use this, but it's a very at the high level, it's a very easy process, which is about opening, exploring, and closing. So if you want to think about it in a slightly different way, it's about divergent thought, emergent thought, and convergent thought. So this is the process of innovation. So divergent thought is about setting the stage. It's about developing themes, exploring ideas, gathering data for your ideas. Emergent thought, or exploring, is exploring, and really importantly, experimenting. And then convergent thought, as you're coalescing down towards your idea, is around conclusions and decisions and actions. And if you want a very simple concept of what innovation is, then it's about being presented with a problem, about having divergent thoughts of how you deal with it, emergent thoughts of how you pull those different divergent thoughts together, and then convergent thoughts of how you coalesce into one solution that you can then go forward with. And I think it's actually down to 5 questions. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time looking at these 5 questions, because I think these are really important. And if you see these as process steps, I think that's that's something that's useful. So, what do we want to fix? What's happening now? What haven't we seen? What can we do? And what impact did it have? And incidentally, the creative bit in there, the really creative bit in there, where you get down and you do some brainstorming and you do some the bonkers idea generation, is in the what can we do bit. Everything else is hard work and hard thinking. So let's just go through these a little bit. So what do we want to fix? This is about finding the problem, finding the challenge that you have, and asking the questions: is there a problem? Is there something that we want to do? Is there something that we can do anything about? This is so often, and I've seen this in a number of places where people come with questions. It's like, right, I want to fix this big thing. Can you fix that big thing? Do you have the resources? Is it in your sphere of influence? Is it something that can be fixed? If it's not something that can be fixed, can you fix something as part of it? Can you fix a part of it? Which I think is useful. But this is also a time when you bring everyone together. So what do we want to fix? Does everyone know what it is that you're trying to do? Do you and your team and the people that you're working with have an idea or have a strong idea of what problem you're trying to solve? Because if they don't, you're all going to try fixing different problems, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. So then, what's happening now? And what's happening now is about getting really down and dirty into the detail. I want to tell you a little bit of a story about Gillette and razors, which is an interesting diversion away from online learning, but I think it's a useful one. So Gillette were acquired by Procter & Gamble a number of years ago, and Procter & Gamble wanted to go and open up a new market for razors in India, where they didn't have very much market share at all. And so one of the strengths of P&G is around their innovation team. So they went and they spoke to the senior designers in the newly acquired Gillette, and they said, right, you need to go to India. You need to go and get down and understand what it's like for a user. And they pushed back a little bit on that, saying, well, we're in Reading. Why don't we just go and find some local Indians and ask them how they shave and see if there's any difference? Very skeptical. But it was only when they got to India that they discovered that all the assumptions that they'd used were wrong. There was very little running water that people used to shave. Men shaved there in cups of cold water, not running hot water. So the traditional blades, they got clogged up. And so what they did was they designed a very simple razor blade with one blade and a safety guard to stop nicks, and they made it very cheap. And within 3 months, it was the best-selling razor in India. So how's that relevant? Well, it's relevant because it's the only time that if you don't get down with your users, with the people who are actually going to be using your learning, you won't understand what their problems are. You won't understand what challenges they face. And this is something that I think that we in L&D, and certainly from an online point of view, are dreadful at doing. I was at the Fellows Symposium earlier on this week, and there was a guy, and apologies, I can't remember his name. I think he was called John. I'm sure, Don, that you will enlighten me, from the RSPCA. And they were talking about people going on secondment and putting people out into the field so that you can go. And he said you don't really understand what it's like until you've seen a dog that's been mistreated. You don't understand how difficult it is for them to deal with that until you see that and you see that face to face. And that's what we all should be doing. That's what we all should be doing before we even put pen to paper, is understanding what's happening now, what's happening out there with our user base. And it's very simple things like, great, you've got brilliant audio on your online, but if they can't listen to it, you might as well not bother having it. And it's very, very simple things like that. The next one is also extremely interesting, is what haven't we seen? And this is about the difference between insight versus market research or market data. And this is where I think big data is in danger of falling down. I don't want to get into that discussion right now. The way I see it, insight is around looking beyond what is available to everyone else, and taking what you've seen from what's happening right now, and then drawing new connections from that haven't been seen before. So there's a great example of market data for clothing and washing clothing, is that that 37% of washes in households have some foodstuff and some dirt. So market data says we'll produce a product that that allows washing of this dirt at 40 degrees, whatever. That's great. That I'm sure that works really well. But insight is that actually dirt is a good thing. It means that you're living life, that you're doing things and you're being excited. And so if you think about that in a marketing campaign, then the insight is, let's make dirt good. The market data is, we're going to sell it at 40%. And what's going to be more interesting to you? So another very good way of thinking about insight is about peeling back layers, right? So we can see what's going on the surface. So let's dig deeper. Let's find out what's really happening. And of course, this guy knew a thing or two about insight. Henry Ford's very famous quote about the faster horse, but of course no one really wanted a faster horse. And so are you asking the right people? I mean, could you have articulated a need for an iPhone or a smartphone or even a mobile phone, perhaps just a phone, before one was invented? Of course you couldn't. So it's about, insight is about finding the real, building on the what's happening now, and then finding the real story underneath underneath that data that you're finding. And then once you have that insight, then you have an insight into a problem that that perhaps no one else has got, and this is going to help you innovate unbelievably. So then, moving on from what haven't we seen to what can we do, and this is the creative bit. This is the bit that everyone likes, and there's tons of creative ideas out there. I'd recommend having a look at Lateral Thinking by Edward de Bono. Sticky Wisdom by the What If Consultancy is a very good book. And even things like Genius, the book by I think it's James Bannerman, is a very useful set of tools that you can use. I want to share one with you, and hopefully this is the most useful thing that you'll find today. And this is around brainstorming, because I think we do brainstorming wrong, and I'm sure people will disagree with me completely. So, brainstorming is, I think, very easy, but at the moment we spend far too much time brainstorming, thinking of crazy ideas, writing them down on a flip chart, getting someone else to put them all into a presentation 3 weeks later, and we come back and no one can remember what on earth we were talking about. That's what brainstorming is in our experience for most people. This process for brainstorming is well, I think it's very effective, and it's very simple. So brainstorming, I'll walk you through this very quickly and then give you a couple of hopefully a couple of examples. So brainstorming is about taking a small group, and you get some paper, a nice big piece of paper, and put it on the floor in front of you. I'd recommend not doing this around a desk, because that's a bit dull, and that will challenge you. So, small group, some paper. You agree a focus. What is it that we're going to fix? What challenges are we going to try and overcome? And then you put the pen down. Don't touch the pen. Sit on your hands and talk about your ideas. There's some rules here. Talk about your ideas in a nurturing way. You're not allowed to be negative. Every single idea, every single comment needs to be built upon and not destroyed. And then you draw it. After about 3 minutes, you draw it. you draw a picture, and you label it, and you name it. And then you put the paper aside, and you rinse and repeat. And what you have after a period of 20 minutes or so is you have a set of ideas of what you do about a particular problem. Now, there are lots and lots of tools that can be used for brainstorming, lots and lots of ideas around all of these areas that you can use for creativity, and lots of things even around sort of getting insight and finding out what's happening now. But this if you can just take this away, this will help you a lot. Okay, so then we move into what impact did it have, and this is the final question, because you need to review and refine. You need to tell the story of the innovation piece that you've had, and you need to decide what to stop, or to start, or to refine, and that's a very useful concept, because if you're stopping, if you're looking and saying, right, so what did we do well, what didn't we do well, what do we need to tweak next time, it comes back to winning permission. It comes back to helping you to be able to do more of what you want to do the next time that you're there. Okay, I think these slides might be in the wrong order, because this is the outcome of a brainstorm, just to give you some visuals. And this was a concept that I created around a way of displaying some video or further content. And this was just very simple brainstorm. We talked about it, we drew it, we labeled it, we put it away, and now we can use it for something else. Okay, there's also some very simple behaviors involved in innovation, and those innovations are those behaviors, I think, are these, which is curiosity. How curious are you? Are you asking why? What if? And what if, as I said before, is the most important question I think we can ask. How brave are you? If you're after an easy life, then perhaps doing something new isn't the thing that you should be looking for. You need to be a little bit brave to make a difference. No one who has tried to make a difference has had the easiest ride of doing it. There's always something to overcome. And of course, you can overcome that by working with other people. Other people who will allow you to refine your ideas and to grow that innovative thought when it comes to any kind of learning or problem that you're trying to fix. Okay, we're nearly there. But there's a question that I mentioned that I ask. What happens if it all goes wrong? Or what could possibly go wrong when it comes to being innovative? And this is a little bit of a health warning, and hopefully a bit of an inspiration as well. So I want to share with you a couple of projects that I've worked on, and it may completely surprise you to know they weren't massively successful in their entirety, because obviously that never happens, and everything we do is a success. I do think we have a very interesting challenge around sharing our failures and sharing the things that we haven't done well, and so hopefully I'm going to try and work us through this. Failure is a good thing, as we know, but failure in an organization is not necessarily seen as a good thing. And this comes back to what I was talking about winning permission and getting your data, because you need to be able to back yourself up sometimes. So a couple of projects. The first one is what I call a revolution too early, with a question mark at the end of it. This was a project that we did, was doing a very, very new and very interesting method of learning online and teaching people how to do some very skilled things in a legal perspective online. It would have worked very, very well in the UK. This was aimed at an emerging market country, and whilst it worked very well, there were problems with it, and there were things that didn't work, and we should have anticipated and should have done better. So how do you move forward from that? Well, you seek out the DNA of the idea. You seek out the things that you can take forward next time. So what was the core of the idea? What should we have stopped doing? What should we start doing? And what should we refine? And you need to take your own lessons, and you need to learn your own lessons. You need to be very honest about your failure, and be very honest with your group about your failure, and with your teams and with your management. But learn your lessons and take them next time. And next time when you're talking about doing something different, tell them what went wrong and tell them what lessons you learned from it. The other one that I want to talk about is a product, or I called it the product that never was. I think possibly the product that nearly was. And this is a horrible truth, but sometimes things change in your organizations, and you need to decide how you're going to deal with that. Organizations change, of course they do. Your team structure will change. Your best person will disappear from under you. The organization will say, no, we're not doing that anymore. And you know what? That's okay, because that's something that you just need to learn from. Innovation, as I said, it's about being brave, and sometimes being brave can mean you put your neck on the line. A friend of mine who is a head of an online learning for an extremely large organization told me that he lives every day with the expectation that his boss will come in and fire him for doing something too crazy. And I think that mindset is very, very powerful. So I want to finish up, and hopefully I've not rambled on too much about this, but I just want to finish up coming back to this guy, to OhDon. And the quote here is interesting. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge, and this is true, because OhDon didn't know anything about babies, about giving birth to babies, and I think that's something that should act as an inspiration for us. Is that when it comes to innovation, and when it comes to doing things in a different way, we shouldn't be afraid to ask the questions and to challenge and to come up with solutions for things that perhaps we don't have any knowledge in. Yeah, sure, things are going to be unproven. Yes, it's going to take some money, but yes, of course, if we're tweaking, if we're changing rather than doing brand new things, then yeah, sure, we're not doing something new when we can de-risk it there. We're just going to make everything a little bit better, and we're not starting big. And when we've done this, we're going to get permission to do the next thing. Also, having a process that you can walk through, and as Don said, these slides are going to be shared. But having a process that you can walk through of asking those questions and getting down to the detail that you need will give people lots of comfort in. Certainly managers lots of comfort in knowing that there is a process behind this, and it's not a big and fluffy thing. And of course, if it doesn't work, there's always a next project. There's always a next thing that you can try. But make sure you back yourself up with the data and the facts. Now, the final thing I think I'll say about OhDon is that the success of this project apparently was put down to two factors. So the genius of Georges OhDon in thinking of this, and then very, very tellingly, the fact that we, the doctors, paid attention. And of course, that means that if the doctors hadn't have paid attention, then there would have been just this guy with an idea. But his genius, I think, was as much in developing the device, but also it was in being excited and excitable and showing someone else that there was a different future and they could go there. And that's what I think innovation is about. It's about being excited and excitable about the different future and helping people be more effective. Okay, I'm going to stop there and hand back over to Don. Hopefully I haven't gone too much over my time. This is how you
no,
if you have any questions.
Brilliant, Andy. Thank you very much. It is good. Thank you for putting your messages out to us and for sharing your contact details there. Please, I recommend getting in touch with Andy. He clearly knows what he's talking about, and he's been around for long enough to have some of the scars that the rest of us can benefit from. So, Andy, thank you very much for that. A great session. We do have questions. I've got a question. Nigel had a question, but I've got a question first off from Rob Sayers about collaboration. Now, we all live in a collaborative world, and we're being collaborative right now, but Rob asked the question, does collaboration always set loose innovation? I've often found it sometimes stifles. I think what Rob's getting at here is the risk of groupthink stroke the echo chamber, where people are afraid to voice an opinion different to that they think the group is sharing. So how do you set something up, Andy, if you're going through that process, which I loved, to ensure that it really is innovative in a collaborative phase? Andy?
Yeah. What I'd recommend is setting some rules, and the rules the rules are really important. So I mentioned the rules in brainstorming, but there's nothing that kills an idea quicker than a sneer. You don't need to say anything, but all you need to do is sneer, or roll your eyes, or glance at the boss, or shake your head. Now you need to set the rules with that to get through that. There is no magic bullet for making collaboration work, and I want to say that. And people will come up and come back with all sorts of reasons why you mustn't do the things that you're doing. So, but if you signpost at the start and say, look, we're going to try and develop some new ideas here. We're going to try and work on this. We are going to try and deliberately nurture it. And we are not allowed in this space, and make the space very, very small, 10 minutes. We're not allowed in the next 10 minutes to say something bad. Anything we say, we've got to build on. That's, as I found, that allows space to generate things. But you also need to be very honest and say, look, we're going to have time to try and destroy this later. We're going to have time to bring out all the challenges that we've got. There's a tool that the What If consultancy use, which I love, which is called the Cynic Clinic. They're also very, very good at names for tools. I'm not. But the Cynic Clinic is a chance for everyone to really say, right, this is why it's not going to work. This is why we're going to have problems. This is the challenges that we're going to have. But of course, that's brilliant, because if you've gone through a session of let's nurture this, let's greenhouse it, let's make it grow, then having a Cynic Clinic then allows you to define what your problems are, define what your barriers are, what's going to stop it being implemented, and then you can seek to overcome those and answer those questions in your own group first, so that you come out with a shared view of what success is, and it will be a refined view. The other brilliant challenge with innovation is that you come in, and I've done this so many times, you come in and you've got this brilliant idea, and you know it's going to work, and you think you've thought through the problems, and you're very, very precious about it. But really great ideas aren't the same when they've been through a process as they are at the beginning. You've got to collaborate. You've got to let those people discuss, let other people discuss, talk about it, try and knock it down, try and build it up. But if you get too precious about it, it's never going to work anyway. Does that make sense?
Well, absolutely right. And of course, the process there is not just a matter of getting people to pitch in. Two things happen. Firstly, you get people to buy into it, and they become zealots for it, and when they go out and they will support it, as well as that crucial alteration to an idea, which is often the difference between success and failure, which you get just by sharing the idea around.
Yep.
Love the idea of the Cynic Clinic, not least because it tells people, look, maybe this idea is balmy, but we're not going to say it right now. We're going to leave that until we get to the next phase. So it gives people permission to shut up, which is probably as important as the other thing, which I'm very keen on, which is permission to talk. Which, incidentally, is the reason why in these sessions we always talk about the weather 5 minutes before we start. Why? Because it is completely uncontroversial. It's a great British habit. The reason why we talk about the weather in Britain is that it's something you can't be wrong about. Everyone's got an opinion on it. And it gives everybody a chance to say something in the chat session where they feel they're suited to the conversation. So it may look a bit posh, but actually there is some good thinking about it. It kicks off the chat. Now, Andy, Nigel Payne said, referencing Apple, surely, and he had made a process that made the iPhone so successful, and also actually the whole systemization brought about iTunes. Nigel's point is, surely then, what is the difference between tinkering and innovation? Surely, Andy, they're not the same thing. Or are you saying, Andy, that actually tinkering and innovation are the same thing?
Sorry, you're breaking up a tiny bit, Don. So could you try that again?
Sorry, so try and be clear. Nigel's question is, what's the difference between just tinkering with something and with innovation? Surely they're not the same thing, or are they?
Why not? Tinkering, innovation is about, in our context, innovation is around doing things that are going to help make your outcomes better. Okay, so are you going to help? As I see it, it's about helping someone be better, and doing something in a, and someone said it before in the chat, but doing something in a slightly different way that has a better outcome. And so, tinkering with something, I think, it is quite often is the same if it produces a better outcome. So I can persuade you all to be very creative with the concept of a paper, very innovative with the concept of a paperclip, because I can ask you all to think of a use of a paperclip that isn't about clipping paper, or think of an add-on to a paperclip that makes it different to, makes a better way to clip paper. Now, which one of those is innovation and which one of those is tinkering? I think they're very, very closely aligned, but the key is, the key has to be, does it have a better outcome, or does it move something forward? If you're tinkering and it's not changing anything, then you're not necessarily innovating. Now, I think, yeah, I think that's an argument that could run and run. I would also suggest, with the greatest respect, that it might be semantics that we're arguing here as well, and that the innovation, if you're trying to see yourself as being an innovator, then if you're trying to, what am I trying to say here? Let me get my thinking straight. If you want to do something differently, and if it helps you to think that you're a tinkerer rather than an innovator because it helps you in your headspace, then go for it. But if you are, and if that helps, then great. I do think it's a little bit of semantics. I do think it's a little bit of, let's noodle about this a little bit. I think that the key message here is that if you're able to change something that makes a positive difference, then go for it.
And I think that's a good way of wrapping it up. I think that's what matters, rather than the precise definition of things. To put things on the head, of course, if you are a tinkerer, but you want to be acknowledged for what you're doing, perhaps what you're really doing is innovating.
Yep.
Anyway, Jess raised a question, asked that the most dangerous MBA cliched is, if you can't manage it, you can't measure it, which often, as we know, leads to perverse incentives and outcomes. Well, that was Jess's observation. My question is, if you're ignoring measurements, isn't that dangerous? How do you know if you have succeeded? So, Andy, you innovate, you produce something new. How do you ensure that you're actually able to say that you achieved your goal at the end?
Great question. Yeah, that's a great question. It comes back to the first question in the 5-question list, which is what is it we want to fix? Because if you're not fixing something that has some kind of value attached to it in some way, or some kind of measure attached to it in some way, for us in our organizations, then I think you're in a very dangerous place, because you're going to end up with a situation where you're doing stuff because you think it's cool, and you're changing something because you think it's useful. And I alluded to that earlier when we're thinking about we're quite good at going after shiny things in L&D. We have lots of solutions that are looking for a problem, and so having that, what do we want to fix, and how, in addition to that question is, once we know what we want to fix, how do we know it's broken? What measures are in place to know that are there to know that we can improve? And as I mentioned, that can be things like money saved, revenue gained, time saved, metrics in CRM systems, or those kind of things. We all do things in work that can be measured in some way or other, and all have an impact on something or other. So and part of that, what do we want to fix, is finding out what the impact of that fix is.
I think you're right. It comes back to the first question. So if we were trying to fix something, did we fix it? And if not, then perhaps we wasted all that time we spent innovating. But we've come to the end of our time. I have 3 clocks in front of me, all of which are showing we're bang on 11 o'clock London time. I actually have a clock that I travel with. I've stuck a label on it saying London. I never change the time on it, so I always know what time it is back home. It's 11 o'clock in London. I'm going to thank everyone for their participation, their contribution. It's been great. A lot of really smart thinking today, guys. Thank you so much. And of course, all stimulated by Andy Jones. Innovation is too often seen as being this ethereal, fluffy thing. I think Andy's really pinned it down today, giving us some great examples, some fundamental thinking as well, and then a process that we can use to be properly innovative and go from that divergence down to converging on a point of action, taking it forward and measuring it. Thank you so much, Andy. Great session. Thanks, everyone, for contributing. If you want to tell the world about it, LSG webinar is the hashtag to use on Twitter. Will everything be available? Yes, everything will be available at learningskillsgroup.com. Recording, slides, web chat will all be available there. And yes, as always, great session, Mark, right? Andy really pulled the hat out the bag, rabbit out of the hat. Next up, 12 o'clock UK time, 1 hour's time, Imogen Case, Director of Learning and Ethics, mobile learning in practice. 2 weeks ago, we had a demand on mobile. Here it is. Who asked you mobile learning in practice in 1 hour's time, 12 o'clock UK time, with Imogen Case. Once again, thanks everyone for contributing. Andy Jones, once again, thanks so much for talking us through innovation in online learning.
Only pleasure. Thanks,
1 hour.